What's up, guys? In this video, I'll be making what I think is the most realistic yet entertaining UFC White House card possible. My only real criteria for this video are: one, I want to include as many quote-unquote real American fighters as possible. Sean Strickland, Colby Covington, Michael Chandler, those type guys. And two, I want this video to be realistic. I'll only include active fighters, so unless a retired fighter has expressed interest in fighting on the White House card, I won't include them. I'll also be sure to consider the current title picture for every division, as well as the upcoming fights of the top two contenders, as well as the current champion in every division. I'll also be using UFC 300 as a metric, so if some of these fights seem out of order as far as main card versus prelims, consider that in UFC 300, the co-main event was a women's title fight, while Yuri Prochazka, former champ, fought on the prelims. For the first fight of the prelims, I've got Bryce Mitchell versus Kyler Phillips. Mainly because Bryce is an exciting fighter. We all know some of the things he said recently that got him in hot water. Fans love him. I mean, he's as close as you can get to being a quote-unquote American fighter. I think win, lose, or draw, people love watching him fight. He went down from featherweight to bantamweight, won against Said Nurmagomedov. Then we have him fighting against Kyler Phillips, ranked 14th, lost to Vinicius Oliveira and Font, the ranked 12 and 13 bantamweights. I don't think either of these guys will be in title contention or ever fight for a belt at bantamweight, but I think that Kyler Phillips is the most realistic fight for an unranked Bryce Mitchell, and Bryce Mitchell is an exciting fighter to watch. He's definitely somebody you want on the White House card. I think we all agree on that. For the second fight of the prelims, I've got ranked 10th Tim Elliott versus ranked 6 Kai Kara-France. Tim Elliott's on a 2-fight win streak, both via submission. Kai Kara-France just lost to Pantoja, got absolutely dominated, and then before that beat Steve Erceg, who's ranked 11th now. The only reason he got that title shot to begin with was because Pantoja's lapping the division. We need some fresh matchups. I don't think either of these fighters will ever fight for the #1 contender spot or the flyweight belt, but I think this fight would be an amazing matchup. I'd love to see Tim Elliott hopefully move up in the rankings. I think this would be a great fight to have on the White House card. Moving on to a more exciting fight, we've got Michael Chandler versus Rafael Fiziev. I know Chandler wants McGregor, not happening. I know McGregor will be back from his steroid suspension, his ban from the UFC, that 18-month ban, but there's no way McGregor is sobering up and getting back into fighting shape. He's been leading Chandler on for years, and it's not happening. Chandler, he's a dog. We all love to see him fight. Had an amazing fight. Maybe not amazing, but entertaining fight against Paddy. Went to war with Gaethje, went to war with Poirier, Oliveira twice. This guy he definitely deserves to be on the White House card. He's not a main card fighter, but I think that UFC should give him some props. He always goes in, does his thing. We'd love to see him fight. Chandler, he's on a loss streak. Lost to Paddy most recently. Lost to Oliveira. Fiziev beat his most recent fight was a win against an unranked opponent in Bahamondes. Before that, lost to Gaethje. He has a win against Gamrot, which is, I don't even know if that's considered impressive at the moment, considering what just happened with Oliveira. Prior to that, he lost to Gaethje again. I mean, neither of these fighters will be fighting for a title shot, but Chandler's an absolute beast. He's always putting on for the UFC. I think the UFC owes it to him to put him on this card, and no other opponent in the division makes sense for Chandler, for being honest. I mean, Gamrot just lost. I don't see Chandler fighting him. Paddy, Gaethje, Arman, they're all in title contention whether you think they deserve it or not. Holloway wants Oliveira, Oliveira wants Holloway, and Ilya doesn't seem to want to fight anybody. Dariush and BSD have a fight scheduled, so if Chandler's going to be fighting anybody, I think Fiziev is the fight to make. For my fourth fight of the prelims, we've got Kevin Holland versus Joe Pyfer, Officer Pyfer as some people call him. Both these fighters, I mean, Kevin is an absolute company man, puts on for the UFC every time. The guy's the most active fighter in the UFC right now. He has 18 fights in the last 4 years, fights in multiple divisions, fights in welterweight, fights middleweight, even had that catchweight bout against Hamzat. I think he's done so much for the UFC, taking fights on short notice, going up and down weight classes. I think that the UFC kind of not necessarily owes it to him, but he should definitely be on the list of fighters they call for the White House. Fans love him. I mean, at least they did before the 45-70 thing with Rampage. Pyfer, he's another quote-unquote real American. This guy, He's a monster. We love to see him fight. I mean, he's won his last at least 5 that I can think of off the top of my head. Last 5 fights via finish. Both these guys are, well, Kevin is a grappler. Piper is a striker, but he just won his last fight against Abbas Magomedov via submission. So it'd be nice to see if Piper's grappling can keep up with Holland's, or if he has to resort to his striking, which is amazing. Kevin is technically ranked 15th at welterweight, while Piper is 15th at middleweight. But like I said, Kevin has moved up and down the weight classes. In his last 4 years, he's had 18 fights, 7 of which are at middleweight. And it's not like he was just at middleweight and went down to welterweight or vice versa. He does go back and forth, he bounces around. Pause. It'd be nice to see Holland at the UFC White House card, same with Piper. I think regardless of who these guys fight, it would be an amazing fight. And I think Kevin would definitely be the best fighter that Piper would have fought by this time. Magomedov was unranked and he was the best fighter that Piper fought, so I'd love to see Piper get some more exciting and more title-worthy matchups. Not that Holland is necessarily a title contender. For the final fight of the prelims, we got Khalil Roundtree versus Dominic Reyes. 2 fan favorites in the division, if not in the UFC as a whole. Both these guys are in similar situations. I mean, both just lost to top contenders in the division. Roundtree losing to Yuri, who has only ever lost to Pereira, and then Reyes losing to Olberg, who's more than likely fighting Pereira for the belt next. These guys, I think they would be loved to see on the White House card. I mean, anytime they fight a foreigner, those USA chants come out. Whenever Reyes fought Olberg, that chant definitely came out. Fans wanted to see both these guys go on a little bit of a title run. I know people prefer Yuri over Roundtree, and I get it, I understand, but these guys both were on losing streaks for a little bit and then started to accumulate a few wins in the division, move up through the ranks, and possibly fight for the belt one day. Unfortunately, that didn't happen for these guys, but they're both monsters in their own regard, in their own right. And I think that these two go at it and end in a knockout. And this is definitely a fight that you'd want to kick off the main event for the White House card. Both these guys are, like I said, fan favorites, and I think they would boost viewership for Dana and the UFC. Moving on to the first fight of the main event, we have Izzy Adesanya versus Sean Strickland. I know these are both 2 former champs in the middleweight division, so it's a little strange to see them kicking off the main card, but like I said, in UFC 300, Yuri Prochazka was a former champ, and he was on the last fight of the prelims, and then Oliveira was a former champ, yet he was towards the bottom of the main card, so I think it just goes to show how stacked this card will be and how stacked 300 was. Like I said, both these guys are former champs. They've got some bad blood. They both have bad blood with DDP as well. Neither of these guys will likely touch the middleweight belt again, regardless of if Hamzat is defending it or not. I mean, Hamzat is an animal. Nobody in that division beats him, but regardless, I'd love to see a rematch between these two. Izzy, despite losing to Strickland, has a much better UFC resume and a better GOAT argument. I also think that if Sean, who is looking very heavy out of the cage these days, if he makes that cut to middleweight, I do think Izzy would put up a better fight and beat him this time, despite his loss to Imavov. These guys would go. I know Sean jabs and keeps his way to decisions, like everyone says. It's funny how people turn on him, went from being an absolute fan favorite to everyone saying his fights were boring, but I think Izzy would put some pressure on him and hopefully win this one. But regardless, these guys would definitely go to war because there is some tension between the two. For the second fight of the main card, we got Yuri Prochazka versus Magomed Ankalaev. Again, 2 former champs, so I think this goes to show just how stacked this White House card is. Yuri is coming off the win against Khalil Roundtree, Ankalaev off of the loss to Pereira. I don't see the UFC giving either of these fighters a trilogy with Pereira anytime soon. And like I said earlier, I'm trying to keep things consistent with the current title pictures as well as #1 contender fights in each division. So I think that Pereira will fight Olberg, and then these two are definitely going to fight each other in their next fights. There seemed like there's some bad blood between the two at the end of 320. I think Yuri said to a reporter that Ankalaev was trash talking him or something, so I think Yuri actually did call out Ankalaev. I see Yuri winning this one. I mean, it's a pretty safe pick. I mean, despite Ankalaev actually becoming champ and beating Pereira once. Yuri's style is just extremely unpredictable. I mean, the closest thing to it I can think of is like a Johnny Walker, where you never know what the guy is doing. I mean, the guy said at the end of his fight against Roundtree, hey, I realize if you put your hands up, you don't get hit as much. I mean, how do you defend and counter somebody that doesn't even know what they're doing? Yuri's a fan favorite. People would love to see him in this card. They'd love to see him at any card. I think this would be an interesting matchup. Ankalaev seems not timid, but he's fairly reserved. I mean, conservative with his striking. There's no grappling threat from Yuri, so it would be nice to see these two throw their kicks, see how they exchange blows. Pause. This will be a great fight to see, especially just as any exhibition, you know, a #1 contender fight. I think that despite Ankalaev having virtually no personality, the American fans would love to see this fight as well. For the third fight of the main card, I've got Max Holloway versus Charles Oliveira for the BMF belt. This one's an absolute layup, man. I mean, neither of these guys is calling out Ilya for a title shot, and Ilya's not calling out either of them. Oliveira just beat Gamrot and called out Holloway for the rematch. Holloway seems to be accepting it, so this is definitely the fight to make. I think both these guys could headline a pay-per-view on their own with this fight for the BMF belt. Holloway, since moving up to lightweight, is just unstoppable. Dominated Gaethje, dominated Poirier, beat Oliveira once. Oliveira's looking good. I know he just came back from that loss against Topuria in short notice too, and then submitted Gamrot, another grappler. I would say that Oliveira is a bit more of a stylistic matchup or a nightmare for Holloway than vice versa, because the last two guys that Holloway beat were both strikers in Gaethje and Poirier in this weight class specifically. With that being said, I could see Holloway's striking giving Oliveira a big problem. These guys would be absolutely amazing to see on any card for that matter. I would love to see this fight. Possibly a send-off for Oliveira. I think he's done enough for both these fighters have done enough for the UFC as a whole for them to consider them to fight on the White House. I mean, you're not losing views by having these two guys on, regardless of who they fight. Fans love them. Holloway represents America. He's from Hawaii. Oliveira, he is one of the Americans' favorite fighters, despite not actually being from America. I don't think that it makes any sense to not have these guys on. I mean, of the 8 current champions, none of them are American except for Merab, if you want to consider Merab American because he immigrated here. And only 2 #1 contenders in the UFC are American, those being Bilal Muhammad and then Sean O'Malley, who really shouldn't be the #1 contender at this point. But these guys would be an amazing addition to the UFC White House card. For the co-main event, I've got Kayla Harrison versus Amanda Nunes. Now, hear me out. I know that women's MMA fights are not necessarily the most viewed, the most liked, but Kayla Harrison did call out Nunes. Nunes did entertain it, so despite being retired, there is some interest there. I'd argue that this matchup is far more realistic than, say, Chandler versus McGregor. So, and then also in honor of UFC 300, which was the co-main event, was another female title fight. I think it's only right to have at least one female title fight on this card. That being said, this is clearly the most entertaining female fight you can make, with the exception of Shevchenko versus Zhang Weili, which is already set to take place at UFC 322. So I did want to keep all of those already announced fights in mind while making this hypothetical video. I want it to be as realistic as possible, which does kind of reduce the level of entertainment, unfortunately. With that being said, I would love to see these two go at it. 2 of the best women's MMA fighters in UFC history. You have Amanda Nunes, former 2-division champ, Kayla Harrison, current bantamweight champ. Stylistically, it would be interesting. I mean, Kayla's wrestling is decent. I mean, decent is an understatement. But it'd be interesting to see how she goes against Amanda Nunes' grappling, her grappling defense as well. I think this is probably the most entertaining women's MMA fight you can make, and this is definitely the card to have it on, with Kayla Harrison actually being the only American champ in the UFC technically. And for the final fight, the main event of the UFC White House card, I've got Alex Pereira versus John Jones. Hear me out. I know I said that I wanted to keep it realistic and I didn't include McGregor. I know some of you are saying, why would you include McGregor but not Jones? Well, Pereira called out Jones, and then Jones actually entertained it, unlike Chandler called out McGregor, and McGregor has yet to respond on it. Besides that, Joe Rogan himself, who I know the fans are kind of saying that he should not be commentating or announcing UFC anymore because his takes are all the same. They have to change. He says the same thing every fight. But that being said, Joe Rogan also endorsed this fight. And the reason I put Jones over Aspinall, there's two reasons. One is money. I think that having Jones fight Pereira I think that would bring in more viewers regardless of if Aspinall beats Gon or not, which I think Aspinall does beat Gon. With that being said, so Jones would bring in more money, more eyes in the old fans, and then I think that Aspinall, if he wins against Gon, he'll fight the winner of Volkov versus Almeida before June of next year. So I don't see it logistically Aspinall beating Jones, beating the winner of Volkov versus Almeida, and then taking another fight in June. I just don't see that happening. Not saying he can't do it, it just doesn't seem like it will happen. Jones, Pereira's down for everything. He said he'll fight Jones, said he'll fight Aspinall. He wants to move up to heavyweight for that belt, but he did entertain fighting Jones. I don't know if that would be an exhibition or what, as Jones is no longer technically in the UFC, just by being in a testing pool, but I think that Jones is more likely to fight Pereira than Aspinall is. Not saying that Aspinall wouldn't, I just don't see it happening. Again, with Aspinall being so vocal about Jones holding up the division, I don't see Aspinall doing the same by taking this fight. And I think that Dana would not turn down an opportunity to have Jones on the card just because that will do more numbers than Pereira versus Aspinall. I mean, I think if Pereira fought both of these guys, the Jones fight would be closer for him than Aspinall. I don't see Aspinall taking nearly as long to finish Pereira as Jones would. I think this fight would be closer and bring in more money, so it's just the obvious pick. There's no way that the UFC doesn't do that. With that being said, this is my prelim and main card, not predictions, but hopes for the UFC White House card. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. Like, comment, share, subscribe, and I'll catch you in the next one.